Chertsey High School. Today I'm doing the assembly on this week's theme of the week, which is all about wisdom. So I'm going to start with what wisdom is. What is a definition of wisdom? The dictionary definition of wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge and good judgment, and is the quality of being wise. And in this assembly I'm going to talk to you about what that looks like, why it's important, and how that's reflected in the Bible. Some synonyms that you might associate with wisdom are intelligence, understanding and perception. Let's have a look at the mythological and philosophical perspectives about wisdom. Okay, so I wanted to briefly talk to you about what the background is about wisdom, because it's a word that has been used for hundreds of centuries and originates all the way back to ancient Greeks and possibly even before that. And the ancient Greeks really considered wisdom to be a really vital virtue, really important in human life. And then when we look at it philosophically, and we look at really important philosophers like Socrates and Plato, they defined philosophy as the love of wisdom. They often talk about wisdom as understanding why things are a certain way, which is deeper than merely knowing things are a certain way. And so wisdom is really building on the understanding of knowledge. So you might know something, but why is it a certain way? Do you understand why it is what it is? When we look at other traditions like Buddhism, they actually provide guidance to Buddhists on how to develop wisdom because they think it's so important. Then when we look at, for example, the Inuit traditions, developing wisdom is one of the aims of teaching. So an Inuit elder said that a person became wise when they could see what needed to be done and did it successfully without being told what to do. I just really briefly want to explore further traditions and how wisdom's involved in that and talk about wisdom in the Bible. And so I'm just going to read 3 verses from the book of Proverbs and then talk to you about a short story that Jesus told about a wise man. So in Proverbs chapter 10 verse 1 it says, "A wise son brings joy to his father." It then carries on, it says, "The first step to wisdom is the fear of the Lord." I think fear here means awe and wonder, not being terrified like the little dormouse. And then goes on further to say, "Accept instruction and not silver, knowledge rather than pure gold. For wisdom is better than red coral, no jewels can match her." And Jesus told a really important story about a wise man. And it's recorded in Matthew chapter 7 verses 24 to 27 and goes like this. "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." So what we can learn from this is that the foundations of that house were solid. And that's like the foundations of knowledge and that developing into becoming a wise person. And I went round and I asked students here at Chertsey High School what they thought wisdom was and what it looks like. So let's have a listen.
So wisdom is where you're expressing knowledge to everyone, and it's really important because you're also able to express your message to everyone and everyone's able to know it.
I think wisdom is important because it leads you in the right direction of life and it helps you become, I think it's important because it helps you become successful.
Wisdom is being smart and it will help you for your future when you need to get a career.
Wisdom is knowing stuff. You need to know wisdom because then you can teach what you know to other people.
Wisdom is having experience, being wise, and having good judgment. It is important as it helps us make good choices.
Wisdom is growing in knowledge, and wisdom is important because it will help you conquer life when you're older.
I think wisdom means to be smart or wise, and I think it's important because without wisdom you can't use what you know.
I want to briefly talk to you about why wisdom is important. So, wisdom is arguably one of the greatest qualities that a human can possess. It cannot be taught. You can't teach wisdom, not even to whoever might be deemed the most intelligent person on the planet. It's the ability to think and to perform actions using your own experience, insight, and intelligence. It's less about academic knowledge, acquired or learned skills, although they help somebody to become wise. Instead, wisdom is getting the depths of the facts and framing and looking at the bigger picture. And we always talk about the bigger picture and how your learning contributes to that bigger picture in your lessons. It cannot be found in a book. It's not a written theoretical fact, but it is essential for every human to try to become wise. So there was a time when very few people had access to knowledge. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the vast sharing of all types of information that we have today. So with the information age that we're in, where everyone has access to this knowledge, how can you use the knowledge? You might know the knowledge, but how can you use it to become wise? So what does wisdom look like? Is it represented in a particular person? Are they particular values that somebody who is wise has? And so I'm going to talk about those two things now, starting with what wisdom looks like. So the first person that you might think about when you think about wisdom is a wonderful gentleman called Charles Darwin, who was a geologist and biologist, and he's best known for his contributions to the science of evolution. And his proposition was that all species of life have descended over time from common ancestors. And this concept is now widely regarded in the world and taught to you students here in science. And that all stems from Charles Darwin having and developing that knowledge. And people often look to Darwin as someone who's wise because he came up with this amazing concept, which is now widely accepted and considered that foundational concept in science. The second person I want to briefly talk about is Martin Luther King. Now, he was an African-American Baptist minister and very famous activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement until he was assassinated. And he really promoted civil rights for all through non-violence, and did that really famous speech where he talks about having a dream. And people often look to Martin Luther King as someone who was very, very wise at the time, because now we are moving absolutely in the right direction of accepting all people, all humans. We still have a way to go, judging by what's coming out in the media. But he, at that time, in the 1950s, was hugely outspoken and really stood his ground. And people really looked to him as someone who was wise because he used his knowledge for the greater good. The last person I want to talk about might be somebody you're not aware of, and her name is Wangari Maathai, and she is a Kenyan-born environmentalist and pro-democracy activist, and a very, very famous women's rights campaigner. And she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for efforts to prevent conflict through the protection of scarce resources. Now, it would have taken her to understand politics and develop that knowledge and then use it for the greater good. And it's all about using the knowledge that you have, and that might arguably make somebody a wise person. So these three people could represent what wisdom looks like in the modern day. How does wisdom contribute to our everyday? I'm just going to read a short quote. So, everything that wisdom encompasses is about learning to live life in a way that allows you to succeed and have a good life. Most of us want to live an enjoyable and successful life. The only true way to accomplish and maintain it long term is through gaining and utilising wisdom. Wisdom can improve your life in all aspects, physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially. learning from your experiences and the experiences of others, and sharing that wisdom is vital to survival and survival of those you share your wisdom with. So it's all about using that knowledge that you have. And this really links with one of our core values. We always talk about knowledge, determination, and love. And knowledge is one of those pivotal things we really drive here at Chertsey High. And using the knowledge will help somebody to become wise. So think about how you can use knowledge, use what you are learning every single minute of every single day, and how you can use that for the greater good. How can you use your knowledge to become wise? And what qualities could you develop to become wise? What does wisdom look like in your average human being? So, learning from others. Change is inevitable, so learning to adapt. Spending more time listening than speaking. You're not going to learn anything from hearing your own voice, but you might learn something from hearing someone else's voice. If you have an issue, or you have a concern, or you have a worry, raise it, and people can help. And that actually is a sign of wisdom. Acknowledging that you need the help, acknowledging you need the support, and seeking that support from others. That's a wise thing to do. Use a scientific method, so continue to ask questions. Withhold judgment. Don't judge others until you've got concrete evidence. Freely offer the knowledge you've gained to help other people. There's no point in being the smartest person if you're not going to share that knowledge. Be open-minded and learn from your mistakes. Learn to change the things that can be changed and accept that you can't change everything. These qualities really contribute to the bigger picture of wisdom, and these are core qualities that you individually could develop to become wise and use wisdom. So I want to leave you with a short reflection, and I want you to go away and think about these 4 questions, and maybe you talk to your partner, maybe you reflect individually and on your own. Can we think of times when we've not acted wisely and have hurt others by the things we have said or done? Have we used our wisdom to help other people? Have we allowed ourselves to act in a wise way rather than in a thoughtless way? And do we value wisdom? And do we look for it? Do we search for it? Wisdom is a really important human skill to have. You can't read it in a book, but you can develop wisdom by developing that knowledge and using it, sharing it, listening to others. And that all of those qualities together will contribute to make somebody wise. There's not a particular person, it doesn't look like anything, but through those different qualities that I've spoken about, hopefully they will contribute to you thinking about how you can become a wiser person. Thank you so much for listening to this assembly, and have some time to reflect on those questions that I've posed.